I want to welcome you to part 3 of my 7-part video series comparing the Wowtac Model W1 to the Olight Model S1. In this video, I'm going to show you the difference between these lights, and I'm going to give you some great night shots. This is the moonlight mode on the Olight Model S1. It's just barely in front of the camera, so that's about 3 feet away. So again, on this setting, half a lumen, it'll last 25 days, and it has a very good pattern. So now let me move that out of the way, and I will bring in the Wowtac W1. It's also on moonlight mode, and that's also half of a lumen. It'll last 29 days, and you can see that there's a difference in that beam pattern compared to the Olight. You can see that the Wowtac has a tighter hotspot. So now if I bring the Olight in right next to it, and in fact, let me just move that paper out of the way. Okay, and we'll look at the wall here. From the same distance, you can see the one on the right is the Olight S1 and the one on the left is the Wowtac W1. So quite a difference between these two beam patterns. The Olight is a bigger beam. I like what Wowtac has done with their beam pattern on this light. I like the tighter hotspot. Okay, now we're looking at both lights from the same distance. They are both on low. The Olight on the right here is at 8 lumens. That'll last 40 hours. And on the left, the Wowtac is at 12 lumens for 25 hours. So that's low. Now on the right, we have the Olight on medium, 80 lumens for 6 hours. And on the left, the Wowtac is at 60 lumens for 5 hours. So it's a tighter hotspot, but we're starting to see the beam pattern of the Olight coming to life. I kind of like the wider profile of the beam on the Olight here on this setting. Okay, now we have both lights on high. On the right, we have 500 lumens for 1.5 minutes on the Olight S1, and then it'll drop down to a 300 lumen mode for an additional 1.5 hours, 90 minutes. And of course, on the left, we have high of 197 lumens, and they've got a nice tight hotspot on that. It looks good, and it'll last for 95 minutes. Now the S1 does not have a turbo, so you're only going to see the one on the left change. So I'm going to double click that quickly. 1, 2. Now you can see 562 lumens on the left. That's the Wowtac W1, but that turbo will only last for 1 minute. Again, after that step down, it steps down to 215 lumens, and it'll last for 75 minutes. Okay, now let's take a look. Let's turn the Wowtac off for a second, and we'll look at the strobe on the Olight. So let's get that strobe going. There is the strobe on the Olight S1. It's a very constant strobe, 10 Hertz. This will last for 3 hours. And it uses the full 500 lumen brightness for this strobe. Very disorienting. Let's turn that off. Now we will look at the Wowtac W1. Let's go ahead and do the strobe on that one. You can see the strobe here is also very disorienting, but it's not near as bright. They've lowered the lumen level down on the strobe to 150 lumens. The purpose for this is so that they can get a longer runtime of 3.5 hours out of strobe. Personally, I like the way the Olight strobe looks. Let's go back to that. 1, 2, 3. Personally, I like the strobe on the Olight. Okay, we are looking at the Olight Model S1. We are on moonlight mode, half a lumen. You can see that this setting is very good for very close-up things. If you're wanting to look at something up close, if you're wanting to use this maybe as a headlamp to get into your pack, or read a book at night, or maybe you want to dig out a splinter or something like that. This is a remarkable setting for things like that. Now if I take this object out of the way and I try to look off in the distance, it doesn't really show that much. But again, 25 days of runtime on this setting is pretty good. It's good if you're wanting to maybe walk a dog or something at night and you want to be real discreet, but again, the camera does not really justify what it does. I'm shining it down at the floor and you can barely see what's going on. Now if you bump it up to low, you're starting to see things. 8 lumens, 40 hours of runtime. And the camera doesn't pick it up very well on the film here, but I can tell you that I can see pretty well in this room on this setting. This is a good setting, and I like the fact that it'll last for 40 hours. Now if I go to medium, this one we're bumping it up to 80 lumens, and that's a good beam of light. On 80 lumens, this will last for 6 hours. That's a really good setting. And then last but not least, there's high. Full 500 lumens for a minute and a half. And then again, to prevent the overheating, it'll drop down to 300 lumens for 90 minutes, an hour and a half. I'm pointing it up at the sky, to the left, to the right, down, at the floor, and of course, straight ahead. So that's a pretty good amount of light out of such a small light. Let's take a look at the strobe here. There's a look at the Olight S1 strobe. It's a very fast strobe. Very disorienting. And as I said earlier, this will last for 3 hours. So that's pretty good. Let me stop here for a second. And let's bring in the W1 now. So here we have the W1 Wowtac. We're looking at my hand. Maybe digging out a splinter, like I said earlier. If you want to read something, you want to get in a pack, use it for all the same things that I said that you would use moonlight mode for on the S1. Same thing applies here. Now, because this light has a slightly tighter beam, I can see the ground a little bit better. It's still hard for the camera to pick it up, but trust me, I can see a little bit better here out of this beam. I like it. Now we're looking at low. 12 lumens, 25 hours of runtime. I think Olight did a little bit better on this setting because it had a wider beam. Okay, let's bump it up to the next setting. Medium, 60 lumens. That's a really good setting. 5 hours of runtime. You could do a lot with that. 5 hours of runtime, and it's got a nice tight hot spot. And it also has kind of a floody beam to it as well. If you look down there in the distance, you can kind of see that little bit of flood, but it's a really tight hot spot in the middle. Low, medium, there we're looking at high now. 197 lumens, 95 minutes of runtime. That's a good setting. And then of course, double press, 1, 2, turbo, 562 lumens for 1 minute. And then from there, it'll step down to 215 for an additional 75 minutes. Let me take a look at the strobe here. There's the strobe. I think it's kind of a weak strobe. I actually like the strobe on the Olight a little bit better. This Wowtac W1, it lasts a pretty good amount of time, the strobe. what is it, 3.5 hours, but the strobe's only 150 lumens, so it doesn't really, it's not really brightening things up and disorienting as much as I would like. So I got to go with the Olight on the strobe. Now let's go back to the Olight S1 for a minute. Low, medium, and high. You can see the UI is a lot slower. Okay, now let's bring in the Wowtac W1 Turbo. Well, this concludes episode 3 of this series. Again, the Olight S1 on the right and the Wowtac W1 on the left. I hope you enjoyed this series so far. Stay tuned for episode 4 coming up. We're going to test the toughness of these lights. We're going to test them in the water. We're going to throw them around, drop them, and we're really going to beat them up in episode 4. So stay tuned for that. I hope you guys appreciate this series. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I've been working really hard, and I look forward to seeing you guys in episode 4. Please stay tuned. Bye for now.